Okay. It says preparing to live stream. Where did the start recording go? Resume recording. Okay. Okay, John, I think we're good to go.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the February Guam Board of Accountancy monthly board meeting. Present are members Jenny Chu, Francis Baba, Taling Taitano, and myself, and then Executive Director Dave Sanford. I think there's no one else, I guess, joining, right?
We're it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda is the minutes from last month's meeting, which was January of 2022. So please take some time to read the minutes. And if there are no issues, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Talling. Okay, thank you. So last month's meeting minutes are approved. Then the next item on the agenda will be the, what do we want to do, Dave? You want to do the old business?
We can do the old business endowment fund update.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Endowment fund update.
Okay. Here's the basic value over time thing. Shows we dropped, but we still have some. And as of the middle of February, or the 11th of February, we had started the year with 4.7, dropped down to 4.4, almost 4.5 million, which is unrealized loss. So, you know, the markets continue to go up and down 1,000 points every 2 or 3 days. So in the long run, I think we're still okay. I don't see any major issues with that. But being at the 4.5 million mark, we still have 3 TCDs or 250,000 each that as they mature, we intend to contribute those, which will put us over the 5 million mark, which should give us on an average earnings of the planned earnings of 6%, would give us enough to fully support a full-time visiting professor for each semester and going forward. So I don't think that's an issue. The previous 2 years, 20 and 21, we earned 11.9 and 11.48 overall percent after expenses, etc. So I think we're well ahead of our planned growth rate of 6%. So we're hanging in there. There's been 11,000 in fees to date that were taken. So that typically is coming out at around 40,000 a year so far. It's based on a percentage of total assets. So we're still doing pretty good. In terms
Dave,
of
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, so did you say this year so far we're trending at 6% return?
No, the planned, the investment policy statement plan was 6% a year on average over 20 years.
Oh, okay.
So looking at this, the last 2 years we've been over 11%. And
11%.
we were upwards of 8% before that. So we're well ahead of the actual planned growth rate. Right now, year to date, we're down to 4 points. Based on
we're negative. Okay.
But that's the first 2 months. So
first 2 months. Okay.
I think we won't have any indication of a real return rate for 2022 until maybe the middle of the year. By the time some of the stuff that's going on politically kind of burns itself out and we see where we actually wind up, especially as the Fed start raising interest rates, which they say they're going to do, but nobody really knows if they're going to or not. So But on the whole, I think we're still well ahead of the planned growth rate from the start. So can't really complain at this point. As far as the visiting professor program goes, according to Ray, I had an email from him last night, and Ray Johnson, Dr. Johnson, and his wife Marilyn both are still teaching, heavily involved. And Ray says his auditing class is great. He's got 12 or 14 students, something like that, and he's finally gotten them into full cooperation mode. So he's happy with that. Yeah, he says they're actually, participating, speaking up in class, etc. So and he's real happy with that. He's also had some meetings with the dean and the other faculty, and I guess, John, you got a copy of an email about an ad hoc committee that the dean's put together to review the entire accounting program relative to some of the CPA evolution that's going on. So I think Ray's part of the instigation for that. And the first meeting for that ad hoc committee is set for next week, Friday afternoon, I think. So we'll go forward with that and see where it takes us. But I think Ray has some recommendations for improvement, especially in light of some of the things that are coming down the pipe with the CPA evolution, education changes, exam changes. So overall, it's been a good experience. I think from his perspective at this point, they're very happy. So from my perspective, that's a really good thing, because we expect him to refer a lot more people to us in the future.
Yeah. You mean refer as visiting professors?
Other visiting professors, yes. Yeah. And he said he's happy to do that. So, that's one of the chief reasons I was concerned about making sure that he and his Marilyn both had a good experience here. The only change that's coming that I'm not happy with is that Dean Annette has said that she's going to retire as of July. So not sure really what that means, overall for the program, or who will be the future dean. So because she's done well as a dean in terms of our program. So the rest remains to be seen. So that's it. That's all I have.
Dave, what about that other course they were planning to offer?
The Capstone course.
Is it the Capstone, or
it was a Capstone course that Ray's developed, and he's written from scratch. And it involves not so much using the textbook or structured class, but it's a study using cases, and I think he has 8 different cases involving real world incidences. Kind of like the Enron thing and some of the other stuff that's happened over the years. So he's developed these study cases to be used as a capstone course for the senior accountants. He was hoping to be able to teach it, but they said that they didn't do a well enough job of promoting it. So they didn't wind up with any takers. And I think what the conclusion Ray's come to at this point is that a big part of the reason that they don't have any takers is it's not a required course, and the curriculum itself requires so many courses, so many hours. There's no real room for electives, which is something I think he wants to discuss in the ad hoc committee. But he's developed a course, and he's basically talked with Annette, and he's going to leave it with Doreen and Martha so that they'll be able to teach it going forward. So that's kind of the plan anyway. So,
David, is this the course that those that have not reached the 150 hours could take?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the one.
Else
okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the one they were also advertising to the other people. who may have passed the exam but not hit the 150 hours for licensure. So yeah, you're
Okay.
right, John. It's the one they were advertising.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about the visiting professor program with the endowment fund? Okay,
None.
we can move on. Okay. We can move on to the new licensee reimbursement policy update. There's no document for this. I took the draft policy that we reviewed last meeting and sent it to the Attorney General's office, our contact there, Rob Weinberg. And Attorney Weinberg reviewed, I had him review not only Joe McDonald's, sentiment and advice relative to some of the issues, but also what we came up with finally as our draft policy. And Rob came back with a few comments. And the first one I'll say is that basically there's nothing wrong. He didn't see anything wrong with the draft that we came up with. However, he's concerned that if we tried to do it as a through the rulemaking process, the legislature may not accept it simply because it's the fact that we're reimbursing people for becoming licensees. And it has to do a little bit with something he mentioned in one of his emails to me about the fact that we gave the $1 million to the University of Guam. He said, if you tried to put that before the legislature in a rulemaking process, they may look and say, well, you gave $1 million to UOG and now you're giving away money to new licensees. Maybe we should use your money for something else. So he's essentially saying that we need to be cognizant of how the legislature would look at it if you tried to put it through as a rule. However, he still recommends, as Joe did, that we do it as a rule, not as a policy or a resolution. So one of the things that he brought up was that he thought that our requiring residency would likely stand up in court, but there is some concern that it could be challenged, which could cost us more legal fees in the long run if we went that route. So he's not saying it would be, but it could be. So it's just something to be cognizant of. One of the other recommendations he had was that maybe we should look around to some of the other jurisdictions and see if we can find out if anybody else is doing anything similar or has done anything similar in the past that we could use to support the position. So I'm charged, I guess, with doing that for the next meeting. I think that we probably need to, I can do some more research. I can do a quick poll with all the other jurisdictions and see if I can come up with anybody else doing anything akin to what we're trying to do. And then we can look at what the results we get and maybe rethink the process or determine how we want to go forward. So that's kind of where we are with that policy. It was overall his comments were you can do it, it may work, it may or may not work as an incentive, but it's doable and it's legal, but there are some considerations we should take into account before we do it. So
Have we estimated how much it might cost annually?
well, my feeling was it's definitely going to cost us less than $10,000. I mean, $15,000 a year. If we're at a max of $1,500 per licensee, we've never had more than 10 local resident licensees in any one year. Usually it's 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most. So I don't see that we would ever come up with more than 10, which would be $15,000. So it's not a huge expenditure in that sense. So, but
Yeah, but Dave, I think I asked a question last month, how many have pretty much qualified? In other words, once we change this rule, if we're able to do it, is it retroactive to a certain date? How many are out there that will have to reimburse, or is it going to be effective the date of the rule change?
It's at the board's discretion when the effective date is, but
Oh.
to my knowledge, there's only maybe 3 people that would likely qualify for reimbursement, even if we made it retroactive for the last year or last 2 years, maybe 4 people at the
Okay.
most. So
If we gave the money to the university, could the foundation do it? Just wondering.
well, yes, we could condition part of the contribution to the endowment fund that it go through them. So in that sense, we could do that. But same as if we were trying to do a scholarship. I was explaining to Rob that, the bottom line was to incentivize them to become actual Guam CPAs and be resident live here. Simply because all the other things we tried in the past really didn't work to our advantage. So we were actually spending more money and getting even less return than we would if we spent 15,000 on 10 new licensees. So his comments weren't, don't do it. It's just, be aware of what some of the issues might be. So
Yeah, my big concern is the legislature coming after, money.
our funds.
Right.
Yeah, and I explained to him that, our contribution to the university was because of the fact that it's been sitting in our bank account, earning, less than 0.2% when the endowment fund earns, 10 to 15 times that invested. And the reason we couldn't make any higher contribution was that the legislature kept giving us the budget we had from 2019. So he said, "Oh, okay, he understands that. He's just saying, be aware that, some senators might look at that and say, oh, you got money." I said, well, the real source of the contributions was the Guam Computer Test Center. And due to the pandemic, those 400,000 or so of annual excess revenues has totally evaporated. So once we put our TCDs in there, I would see that we're going to operate more or less on a break-even basis. So I don't think we'll have the same excess revenues unless the test center gets revved up again, which could happen, but likely won't happen within the next year, or maybe 18 months at the earliest. So, and in the future, if the test center does prove out to be active and productive in terms of revenues for us again, that would just give us the excess revenues to contribute. But without the test center, we won't really be generating any major source of excess revenues. So I can do some research and do the quick poll with the other jurisdictions and see what I can find out, and we can regroup on it. I'll distribute whatever information I find, and then we can regroup and discuss it in the next meeting if you like.
I think that sounds like a good idea, Tolling. If, for example, we transfer 15,000, 30,000 to the endowment and have them specifically identify it for this program. Then all we do, I guess, is identify the recipients, and then they pay it out.
Well, I think what we would do is contribute it with
Contribute.
Specifications that this is like you do a scholarship. This is what people have to do to qualify for it, and then they would handle the qualification and distribution, I guess.
Okay.
I know we can do that, so that might be the better way to do it. So ultimately.
Okay, I think that's
Okay.
good.
Well, I'll do the research and then I'll come back. We can discuss it at the next meeting, where we want to finalize where we want to go with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Okay. Okay. Next thing we have is the applications for initial licenses and certifications. I think it starts over here on page 17. Yep. Okay. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review them. We had one person from Guam. The majority of them are from Asia, the Middle East. One guy from Washington, one from New York, here and there, but mostly the Middle East and Asia, Japan, and India.
I noticed the guy from Guan doesn't work for a firm.
Right.
there a-
Works for
is there a-
well,
Is there a CPA that works at that construction company?
I don't know at this point, but he's basically just applying
Oh,
for
okay.
the inactive license,
Oh,
which means
Oh, no, okay.
he's passed the exam.
Sorry, I
but,
know this person.
Yeah, yeah.
He works for me. Okay.
Oh, so he's working for you now.
Yeah, yeah, he's working for
Okay.
me now.
Okay, because I was wondering,
He's,
he left off here in June. So,
he just started last year, November. Okay.
okay, so he's
Okay.
just recently completed his degree and taken the exam.
He must have, yes. Must have passed.
Yeah, so, yeah, so basically he's applying for inactive, where he's
Okay.
completed his education and passed the exam, but he hasn't completed his experience yet. So,
Oh, no, okay, I remember now. Sorry, I feel bad. He doesn't have us enough courses to be licensed yet in Guam. I think what he's lacking is I'm not sure if it's business law or if it's auditing or one of those
okay.
courses. That's I guess wherever he took the exam, he was able to qualify to sit for it there.
It's probably business law then, because that's the only one we require that some of the other ones don't. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So I think he's just finishing it up last semester or this, I think last semester he just finished it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's where he's at. But then, yeah, all of these are the inactive initial certificates. But I continue to notice that 98, I guess about 98% of the new licensee applications we get are people working for the bigger firms. You know, got Price, EY, KPMG, a number of the other big firms too, even the foreign firms, especially in India and Saudi Arabia. So, but we didn't have any issues with these. This is a girl or a guy who's getting reinstated. Based on the email that we sent about CPE, we had a few people come back and say, "Oh wow, I'm sorry, I forgot I'm delinquent. I need to reactivate." So they're coming back to reinstate or become active again. And James Quack applied for his firm license as a sole proprietor. So, but
do you need a motion?
yes, ma'am, we need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
I hear a
Second.
second. By Francis, thank you.
Okay. Okay, now we can move on to this credit extension request. This is a guy, he's requesting us to extend his credit for audit, which expires in February. He was set to take the exam, but then his wife was hospitalized with myasthenia gravis, so he wound up taking care of her, and then he had some issues of his own, and he sent in about I think 22 pages of documentation. So, he pretty well documented himself, and he's only asking for an extension to March because he's planning now to take the exam in late March, early April. And I'm thinking that since we've extended all the other, the Chinese and the other people who say they couldn't test to June 30th, we should just extend them to June 30th, 2022, and let that be it. That gives him enough time to take the exam and finish or whatever. We've told all of the other people we extended credits and notices to schedule through June 30th, 2022. That will be the last extension we're going to give for any of the NTSs or the credits. So you either get done or you're going to have a problem. So I'm thinking we should do the same for this guy. He did a good job of documenting his issues, and it pretty well looks to be okay. So he's the only one requesting anything. So
Okay.
I
have no issues with that. I think that's fine with me.
Okay, so we'll extend them through June 30th, 2022, like all the rest, and then that's it for everybody at this point. So, okay, can move on to the candidate care and the quarterly report, which I think starts on page 45, 46. Okay, this is for the last quarter of 2021. And again, there are issues where technical software and hardware were the majority, and they awarded 43 retests. This comes from something that we've been discussing at the CBT admin committee. This is examples are, the exam won't launch, the tools don't work, the exam shuts down, it's unable to restart, or issues with the authoritative literature, meaning there's an authoritative literature package that's part of the exam, which they have to use to do research for a specific item. And it's been an issue trying to get it to work all the time. Same thing here, exhibits opening blank, network lag causes some problem. The other was a driver release, and the broken due to packaging error, blah, blah. The CBT admin committee, which I'm on, we've been discussing the changes to the CPA exam coming up for 2024. And we just recently, as of 1 a.m. 2 days ago, discussed some of the actual technical changes. And some of that had to do with changing out Excel for another worksheet program. They found that one of the things they found, which was contributing to a lot of these issues, is Excel is very difficult to lock down from an exam standpoint to keep people from doing things that take him out of the exam context. So it's an issue from a security standpoint, but it became difficult to lock it down to the point where it needed to be without irritating a lot of the more powerful Excel users, because they're used to using functions that you weren't able to use due to the lockdown. So it was a two-edged sword. So and they've discovered that some of the Excel issues they were having was what was contributing to a number of these issues. So I think most of these technical issues are going to be addressed in the new exam that they're putting together. It's going to be completely rebuilt from a component standpoint. So from technically speaking, not content wise, but technically speaking. So it should be much better off in the futures.
Dave, is this overall for all the tests or just for the Guam tests?
No, this is overall for all the tests for that quarter worldwide.
Okay.
It's a worldwide analysis. Excuse me. Okay. Then we have the Q4 performance, the overall exam performance for us. And our new candidates were 446. Our total sections is 1622. That put us into the number 7 slot for candidates and sections. So we're 7 out of 55 is pretty good. Which is kind of a testament to this little section down here that I've outlined in red, which shows you the difference between 2019, 20, and 21. So we've actually had a pretty good increase back to almost the 2019 or just above the 2019 level, which is better than what shows on the overall. I'll show you later, but we're still at a pass rate of 48, 49%, and our average score is now above 70. It used to be lagging in the mid 60s. So we've done better in that sense, but our sections per candidate has dropped to the 1.3. It was running in the past at 1.7, 1.8. So, but it has dropped. So most of that, I think, is just due to people rethinking their issues with the pandemic and being able to actually test. So, but overall, we're in the midpoint basically with our average score, which means our candidates aren't any better or worse than any other jurisdiction. But we are seeing an increase in Guam candidates relative to overall candidates. Our degree types, it's kind of interesting because we have 20% that is enrolled in other versus 10% advanced degrees and 70% bachelor's. The 70% bachelor's typically agrees with the overall worldwide, but the advanced versus enrolled other is almost reversed, where they have like 20% advanced and 10% other. We have 20% other and 10% advanced. But then again, we're also the reciprocal from a foreign address standpoint. We have 92% versus basically 8% in-state or local. And typically the overall runs 10% foreign and 90% domestic. So this from the Guam standpoint. So this is new candidates versus candidates passing. So our pass rates continue to go up a little, but in relation to our overall candidates, we're getting more candidates. So if you look at the overall, which is worldwide, so remember we had 400 and 1,600 sections. They only had 7,600 candidates, new candidates overall. This is worldwide. So you know, we got not quite 1%, but from a pass rate and an average score, we were right even with the rest of them. Same with the sections per candidates. California had the most candidates with 4,400, and but if you see here the sections and candidates on an overall worldwide basis, 1920 was up and 21 is way down. And the same thing here for candidates. 1920 went up barely, but they're down, where we were here, we went down, and now we're up. So we're kind of bucking the trend in the case in terms of new candidates overall. So of course our average age is typically always a little older than theirs, but here's where I said, you see their advanced degrees is 20%, 21, 22% enrolled as other. Ours is the opposite of this. Same with the foreign versus foreign is 15% versus basically 85% domestic. we're generally the opposite of that. So from the standpoint that most of our candidates are English as a second language, practically all of them, and we're getting more candidates than the rest of the world on an increasing basis from prior years. We're not doing too bad.
Dave, is the enrolled other include those candidates who have their foreign transcripts or went to foreign universities and we have to get that converted?
No, not really. Enrolled other typically means that they're in some other kind of program, or enrolled means that they're actually sitting for the exam before they complete their education. Or in other states, other means like, they're allowed to sit at 120, but they can't get licensed to 150. So they're allowed to sit. So I've tried to get a definition, a breakout on that category, but they won't give it. I don't think they have a real clear definition as to how it, based on how it gets collected. It's a little more muddy than they want. Degrees. So. In that quarter, then you're looking at jurisdictions like Florida and Alaska, where we basically were ahead of Florida and even with Alaska. The only 6 other jurisdictions that were ahead of us, like Illinois, and then you got New York, and even place like Pennsylvania only had 1,295 candidates. We had 1,244. So and when we're ahead of Florida and we're even with a place like Pennsylvania, and Washington, we were ahead of Washington. So in that sense, we're doing okay with our new candidates and our continuing applications. So all I can say is that in that sense, we should be okay relative to our forecast for our application revenues. We continue to get new applicants where other jurisdictions are falling down. So I can't specifically say why, other than the fact that I guess most of it's because we're covering I guess in some sense we're covering a bigger geographical area, in the sense that we take the foreign candidates where a lot of other jurisdictions do not. So, any questions on the exam performance? If not, we'll move on to we can move on to the communications from, this is from the January Board of Directors meeting, just kind of a follow-up summary to what they were talking about in October. But Kent Noble was appointed to the Center for the Public Trust Board. There's been a lot of meetings between Mike Fritz, who's now the chair, and Vice Chair Richard Reisig. They're having their planning meetings, meeting with the other NASBA committees. Ken Bishop is saying that at this point, they're saying that the conferences in 2022 will return to being face-to-face meetings. And so far at this point, the first one would be the Executive Director Conference in April. And I was told 2 days ago in a meeting that Tom Kenny told me that, yeah, they are going to have it face-to-face. So I'll be planning to go to that. They want to have all of their conferences face-to-face this year. An option to view it virtually, but it won't be like a Zoom participation. It'll be more like just a virtual viewing of the event. Colleen's been making the rounds. NASBA practiced their annual business continuity.
Dave's frozen.
Yeah, I don't hear him.
Can't hear me?
Now I can.
Hang on. I was supposed
You're
to
good now.
Okay, hold on. I'm meeting in the people in the waiting room. Okay, so you can hear me now, okay?
Yes.
I was saying that Colleen Conrad had meetings with IFAC and the IAASB and the IESBA and the NASBA AICPA pre-summit meeting. They've talked about the ethics standards, international auditing standards. So she gets around to most of those meetings, and they've talked about the IT projects underway to update the gateway for the new exam. They're anticipating it's going to take them at least a year to get most of those in place. Once they complete the specifications, which they're writing at this point, they've just basically begun writing the specs. So, NASBA's decided to pause publication of the performance book because of CPA Evolution. This was the book that analyzed, by candidates from individual university at the individual university level or institution level. And it also analyzed by level of education and things like that. There were a lot of demographics in it, and the universities like to use it. Some to support themselves and others to make sure nobody saw their performance. But it was a revenue source for NASBA. They sold it to the universities and some other interested parties, but they've decided to put it on hold until the new exam is implemented because of the changes that are gonna really change how the analyses need to take place. So the other thing is Colleen updated on the CPA Evolution. They seem to have plenty of interest in it, and there's a lot more familiarity with the program by faculty and students than they expected. Ken's discussing CPA pipeline initiatives, and they've created an internal task force to work on communication strategies and measurement metrics to see how they can help promote and
Lost you again, Dave.
can anybody hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. That's really odd. Oh, I get a internet is unstable. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
That's odd. ARPL has established a legislative review working group, and John Johnson from NASBA's Director of Legislative and Governmental Affairs is going to be in charge of that. The Center for Public Trust is operating an ethics certification program, and that program is helping to fund the students coming to the CPT leadership program at 112 schools across 38 states. So they're making pretty good progress with that. One of the things that the CPT has done is established ethics courses that some states require, certain their actual specific education or ethics course relative to their individual licensees. Like I have to take a Florida ethics course every 2 years. They've developed courses that can be used for that, for CPE courses and ethics, if we're ever interested in, using one. The executive director committee is working on our conference that's supposed to be held in April. I attended this webinar on the education committee's webinar to educate board members about some of the issues with education and implementation for evolution. It was interesting. Mostly it was educators and board members that are educators. So it's kind of interesting to get some of their perspective.
Hey, Dave, sorry, was that an early morning webinar? Do you know if there's a replay or rebroadcast?
I'll check and see if there's a replay, but yes, it was, I think it was one of the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. things, or 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. things. It wound up being about an hour or so of presentation, and then it was supposed to be, I think, an hour of breakout, and we had about an hour and a half of breakout in the session I was in. But yeah, it was one of the 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. things.
Okay.
I'll check and see if there's a link to a video. I'll send it to you.
Okay, good.
That's the one where I posed the question about how do you determine how much credit a student would get for ethics and research and analysis and communications that's integrated into a course. And the two professors that spoke up that actually teach courses said essentially damned if they know. I mean, they were the ones that said that even though they teach the courses, they could not actually determine how much credit they should give for each one of those subject matter areas in a total course. So I'm thinking that ultimately I'm going to talk to the UAA people about changing the language, because that's where the language comes from about integrated versus discrete courses. And it's really causing us headaches, because now the evaluators are saying, well, how do we know how much credit, and should we do it or not?
Mhm.
And, you know, the only answer is go back and look at the syllabus and see how much time they spend on it. But when you ask the professor who taught the course and they tell you that they couldn't really determine it, then I think it's a moot point that should just be stricken from the entire consideration process. You either took a course or you didn't, you know. Okay, the relation with member boards committee is supposed to have some focus questions they want to bring up during the regional meetings. The regional meetings are scheduled for June. I think the Western region meeting is scheduled for the first week of June 6 to 8 in Colorado Springs. If anybody's interested in attending, let me know. The annual meeting is going to be in late October. Trying to remember where it'll be. I'm not sure at this point.
I think San
I'll have
Diego.
to check. That's what I'm thinking, but the last thing I saw said tentatively, so they may be having issues with that booking. I'm not sure. Diversity committee is still working with the CPT to establish chapters on the historically Black colleges and universities campuses. And then Katrina Salazar, who used to be our Pacific region director, is now the CPE committee chair, and says she'll be reviewing the CPE standards in 2022. So if we move from that was the January 2022 meeting. This is October 29, which goes into a little more detail that we'll just run through. It's mostly good bedtime reading, but Faye Miller and Dolly Lavani were appointed to the exam review board. They're two long-term NASBA board of directors members. Mike Fritz reported that they had a record number of applications from board members wanting to be on NASBA committees. It's for the first time. For the first time, they had more people wanting to get on a committee than they could actually put on a committee. So that's, I guess, representative of the growth. Ken Bishop reported in NASBA annual report, they produced it in-house for the first time. It's been done outside previously, which of course costs more money. And he informed the board that for the first time in its history, NASBA had a meeting in Nashville in July 2021. they moved there, I don't know how many years ago. It's the first time they actually had an annual meeting or had a board of directors meeting there. They've always been somewhere else. Nancy Corrigan is our incoming Pacific Region Director. So she was attended her first board meeting. She's the one that wants to attend one of our meetings either in July or November. So, and she also chairs the CBT Admin Committee, which I'm on. She's the chair of the California board. So, Ken Bishop provided an overview of the NASBA flexible and remote work policy and says the number one reason people leave jobs in Nashville is the commute. So they're trying to adjust to a remote workforce to modify their policy for that. Yes, sir. Comments? Okay. The unemployment rate in Nashville is 2.9%, down from a high of 16%. There's 27,000 job openings in Nashville's urban core, which is making it hard for them to hire, I guess. And, you know, but that's relative to the 5,000 people we have here that don't want to look for a job anymore, I guess. So maybe they should, if they're interested in working, look for Nashville. Ken reported the importance of face-to-face board of director meetings, positive interactions, and he's still hopeful that all the 2022 conferences will be face-to-face. Although they're going to keep their committee meetings remote through the end of the calendar year. Colleen reported that the AICPA Fall Council meeting, which I attended, and then there was a tri-party meeting between AICPA, Prometric, and NASBA. I call it the triad, relative to the contract and evolution and all those kind of things. And then she also met with the Accountants Coalition representing review course providers and the American Accounting Association. The Evolution Initiative is alive and well, and the surveys indicate there's greater familiarity among the faculty relative to the project. Same is true for the students. Student engagement in coming most indicates 43% of the students responded to a survey were somewhat or significantly aware of the changes. So NASBA is looking at the exam review board staff for outreach and data research related to the pipeline there. That's relative to using the task force that they set up. They're trying to focus on a continuum of interest among students, beginning with the K-12 and the need to introduce accounting profession in or before high school. And that's one of the things that came out of the AICPA fall council meeting. There was a thing released, I think we went over a couple of meetings ago, by one of the societies, and it basically was saying that the kids that were introduced to accounting at the high school level were much more prone to wind up in an accounting major than the kids that were not introduced at high school at all. So that's kind of why they're looking at that. Remote testing by Prometric is put on hold. They have some security issues to solve. And NASBA's got the $10 million project for the gateway that they say they're working on. They were curious, and they asked a number of the board's executive directors what it would take to change our systems. And for the majority of us, we don't have complicated systems, so it's not that difficult to make a change. And considering that most of the systems, especially the one we set up, basically followed the structure of the gateway in terms of a database and the data required. So we don't see it as any real issue for adding to or subtracting from the data we provide. It's just a matter of adding some of the fields to collect the data for the new sections or focuses. But that seems that the job for the boards will be a less difficult than they thought it might be. I think the bigger chunk of the work is for the NASBA doing the gateway and AICPA building the exam. Okay, there's recent outreach activities, updates on evolution and the UAA model rules on education content and qualifications. That's the one I want to have some input on in the near future when I go to the executive director committee meeting conference. They've done presentations at state societies and AICPA. They finally met with the Institute of Management Accountants and discussed the model curriculum because the IMA had complained, or CMA had complained about the lack of management accounting, but it wasn't thrown out. It just wasn't positioned like they thought it was. And then when they were told where it was going to be and what it was going to consider, they were okay with it. The rest is legislative activities in ARPL, which they continue to work. And then Bishop reported on trending topics, including the CGMA and recent efforts to have possible impact on the pipeline and firm interest in apprenticeships or internships as part of the education model. I think, John, we mentioned that came out in one of the EY's internship program or something to do with educational funding. With the agreement they had with one of the colleges to actually have the coursework done in EY, but they get college credit for it, right?
Yeah, it's to bridge the gap, the 30 hours.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So financially, they're doing okay, and they anticipated annual revenue increase due to recognition of deferred revenue items and higher than anticipated exam candidate volume. This was back in October, but then they realized for the quarter that their total revenues were lower than before. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. For the most part, that's it. There's a little bit with the November, and this one is, well, let's see. Sorry. This executive directors conference, member boards agreed to continue discussing focused questions, and they're preparing for the regional breakout, which was brought up in the January meeting. UAA is still considering no-CLAR, working on that. They're working on some confidentiality, and a firm requirement focused on work experience to supervise the auditor's report. More jurisdictions are asking about requiring audit experience in order to be authorized to sign the test reports. The Education Committee awarded a grant to a project called Will CPA Evolution increase the attractiveness of the accounting profession to students with higher analytical and technological skills. So we'll see. In other words, will the changes in CPA Evolution attract IT people and data analysis people and things like that? So I guess we'll find out. Diversity committee is still hard at work, and they also want to create a training video for those who are responsible for Board of Accountancy appointments and design a program to be shared. I'm not sure that their training video would ever get into the hands of anybody in Guam responsible for a board accountancy appointment. Not from a training standpoint. It's not a hard and fast fixed person position. Of course, we know about the exam changes, and then the interest in internships with education. That's the one I guess I was talking about that EY has. And then there's been some issues about discussing the principal place of business and numerous changes to the UAA, including mobility with continual turnover. You know, does anybody really know where the history is on how we should have a principal based of place of business description and what it's used for, or what it's adopted for. We still use the principal place of business description in our law, and it's relative to establishing the jurisdiction that you're essentially operating in. Excuse me. This is the virtual meeting that basically just took place after the annual meeting elections. So they brought in all the new officers. Sorry. The last thing I have is the financial summary. Does anybody have any questions about it? We're basically on track, considering this is 4 months. So if you extrapolate it out annually, we're my best guess is somewhere between 490 and 520 in terms of total revenues. And of
Dave,
course,
the reason why the individual licensing fees are low compared to the others is because it's due in June? Is that the reason? Is it due
yeah,
in
that's
June?
yeah,
Okay.
that's the reason. The deadline is June 30th, and the majority of the revenue we get from the individual licensing fees, which is essentially the renewals. Certification fees are all the new licensees. Individual fees is renewals, and since it's due in June, the majority of activity comes in between March and June, with the bulk of it in late May and all through June. But on an
It's due in
overall,
June, but it's the 2023 year, right?
right, it'd be due in June, so it would run from June 2022 or July 2022 to June 2023. So we'll see an uptick in those revenues in March, and then the majority of it it'll start coming in April, and then more of it will come in May, and then the bulk of it in June. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But if we extrapolate the total that we have now, and I annualize each one on a regular basis, but it'll come out to about somewhere around 490 or 520, I think, in total revenues. And that's considering that the test center revenues are actually zero. So from a budget standpoint, and we have a few thousand, but to date, we have only the $1,750 over the 4 months, which represents it's $70 a candidate, and about 20 something candidates that have actually taken the test in the test center. So I don't expect to get anything there, but expense wise, we're holding steady. So if you take out the $1 million contribution, then we're at 127 versus 165. So we're about 38 to the good for the first 4 months. And that's why I'm thinking the way the revenues run for licensing fees, we'll probably wind up with an excess of somewhere between 20 and 50,000 on an overall basis, which I think is pretty reasonable. These 758,000 we have in TCDs matures over the next 18 months. There's one that matures in April, and then there's another one then 6 months after that. And, well, actually, I think it's in November now. And then there's one that'll be in 2023. So if we continue contributing these as they mature to the endowment fund, we'll get we should get up to maybe 5.2, 5.4 mil in total funds, which gives us enough to earn enough to support a full-time visiting professor every semester, and still have enough to a contingency to operate the board on. I think we'll be operating on a basically a break even or a bit more than break even basis. if the test center continues to operate and becomes more viable and generates more revenues, that'll just be the excess revenues that we'll be able to contribute. But I see this, that basically going forward, operating on more or less a break-even. I'm sure we'll be able to pay the bills. We should have a little bit of excess, but nothing like we've had in the past with the test center revenues. You can see here now we have 3 months. Even though we've seen a little bit of decline here in the revenue over these months, we're still way ahead of last year in terms of total revenues and exams and sections. So on the whole, we're still doing better than the rest of the world in terms of overall improvement in candidates and application revenues. So any questions about that?
No questions for me.
If there's no questions, one of the things that I just totally forgot to do in the last meeting was ask for a formal motion to approve our budget that we submitted to the legislature. We reviewed it and nobody had any objections, but we didn't actually make a formal motion to approve it, which I think we probably should do.
Can you present the budget again? It's just move to the.
Yeah, I'll have to go find it. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it here quickly. I think we had it in the last. See if I can get. I think I have it here. Okay, let's see if this is it. Okay, this is it. I'll have to share it. Hold on. Have to pick another share here. This one. Okay, can you see that now?
Can see it now. Yeah.
Okay. Not sure. So this was where we were budgeting the 537,000 for revenues without the test center, of course,
Okay.
and the 497,200 in expenses. So it's 39,800 in excess revenues.
And what's the contribution to the endowment fund?
In this budget, there's no contribution
Oh,
to
okay.
the endowment fund, as that's in lieu of the fact that we're going to be contributing these TCDs as they mature
Okay.
over the next 18 months. So effectively, this budget is for FY 2023, which is October 22 to September 23. So that's about a year and a half, about 18 months, 19 months. And that 19 months will contribute this 750,000 in total TCDs.
That doesn't have to be appropriated.
Well, it's appropriated in the sense that the recent budget act for
Mhm.
FY 2022 allowed us to use any previously appropriated excess funds. So we could use these funds to actually contribute. Also, I can say that one of Rob's comments was that when he and Carl saw that we contributed $1 million to the endowment fund, they went to take a look at our law to see, and between that and the budget law, they both agreed that, yeah, there was no problem with that. So we're allowed to use any surplus funds that we had to be contributed. So we can do that going forward. It's there's no expiration on that, essentially on that appropriation of excess funds.
You know, I recall that you were going to look into providing, was it certificates and, or other documents, electronically instead of mailing it?
Yeah,
Or we
yeah,
still
that's
sort of going down that?
correct. What I want to do with that is essentially we have to continue sending certificates for the new licensees. You know, everybody needs a new certificate. So for the new licensees, we would continue to mail certificates, CPA certificate, and their first license. And then from a renewal standpoint, which is the bulk of it now, I want to implement an online system that essentially allows everybody who has a license, like any one of us, to go online and automatically just renew your license, apply for a renewal, pay your fees, and you get an email of a PDF document that you can print and put on your wall or put in your wallet or whatever. There's a number of jurisdictions doing that. Florida's one of them. I get my renewal now by email. And I found one company that offers online licensing. I was talking to the girl, I think she's from Oregon. She's a new executive director there since the middle of last year. And they implemented a new online licensing system. They signed their contract in September and they were up live in January. So when this was all discussed, because there's a number of executive directors that are looking for online licensing systems, and in the past, all the things we've all discussed and looked at were 300,000 to 400,000 up, and took a while, and specs and all kinds of stuff to develop. But now there's a couple that are offering it as a service in the cloud, and this one that she implemented is in the cloud, and they have 2 or 3 other boards that they're doing. When I asked her what the cost was, she said, well, she had to sign a contract. It's $15,000 a year for 5 years, which is frankly very reasonable. So they're on my list to contact because I want to get a demo and find out exactly what all they can do. But they have very good references. They've been around for quite a while. So I'm going to investigate that and see. And if it seems to be a viable solution, then I'll come up with them and a couple of other ones and we'll take a look at it. But 15,000 a year is very reasonable in terms of total cost, even if it is a 5-year contract. And she had 5,000 or 6,000 licensees that renew every year. And we're getting close to that. We're up to around 3,000 renewals, 3,000 to 4,000 renewals. So I think our cost would be about the same. So, but that would alleviate a number of issues we have in just terms of processing paperwork. The biggest advantage we have right now is that having gone to using CPACE to process our exam applications for all the candidates, they keep track of all of the documentation of a candidate in an electronic or digital file. They also keep track of all the exam scores and everything else. And once a candidate passes the exam, they send us that digital file, which is the entire record of that candidate's history in taking the exam and their educational approvals and everything else. So we get that file digitally, and then all we have to do is do the licensing and add it from a scan standpoint, add it to their file. And then we've basically got a completely digital filing system in terms of our candidate database. So that's kind of where I want to go. But it's, you know, been a while for anybody to come up with a system that was available, usable, and, you know, customizable enough that it would do what we need it to do. We're not overly complicated in terms of licensing, so that would give us the out for being able to do it electronically and to stop mailing everything except the new certificates to new licensees. And frankly, a lot of that, we've begun to defray a lot of the costs because a lot of our new licensees request it to be sent via courier, and we add on the courier charges to do so. So in that sense, we're coming out a little bit ahead. But yeah, that's where I want to go. So we stop all the mailing. The postage is such a big cost we have.
So you need a motion to approve the budget. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
I think we should do.
So moved.
Okay, and here's a second. By Francis, okay. Thank you. So the FY23 budget is approved.
Okay. The only other issue I have is that we're supposed to have officer elections. So I don't know if we want to have officer elections with Todd being absent, considering he's vice chair, but I know, John, you're the chair and Todd's the vice chair, and Francis, you've been the secretary and assistant treasurer. So don't know if you want to continue or if you want to have elections now, or you guys want to debate it among yourselves.
Well, we're welcome to entertain any requests. And then we can wait for Todd to come back.
I don't think you're going to have any requests to replace you.
Okay, so do we want to, I guess, what do we do, Dave? Do we make a motion to approve, or do we want to wait till next month when Todd's here?
We can wait till next month when
Okay.
Todd's coming, but I just think that we should think about it. I don't know, Francis, if you want to continue to be secretary or treasurer or what, maybe you guys can discuss it among yourselves or whatever.
I think
Cool.
I think Daphne was the assistant or the treasurer in the past, so maybe
Correct.
we would have someone to replace Daphne in that capacity.
Okay.
I'm okay with continuing as a secretary
Okay.
unless there's other members that wanted to take on the role.
I don't know, Jenny, you want to take an office, or you're content to be a member?
I'm content.
All right, Jenny, what did you say?
I'm content.
You're
She's
content.
content.
Oh, so are you nominating?
That was a multiple choice question, was it?
No, that's a de facto nomination of Ta Ling for treasurer. Anyway.
Okay, so I think
Just
that's
think about
the
it. I mean,
slate,
that's
and then
just-
we can wait for Todd
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
next month's meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's just something we needed to think about because we're supposed to bring it up in one of our first meetings for the year. So,
Yeah, I think, unless it's changed, I think it's supposed to be in January.
it is. It says January, but you know, I'm a little behind. So
Okay, so we'll just table that for
Okay.
March meeting. So Dave, I think the only other item, maybe just for official discussion here, is that it's, of course, one is the RFP for the administrative services. And I just for,
correct.
I guess everyone knows that Ta Ling has been, will be handling the RFP process. So she's working with the AG's office to, I guess, to get this going. I guess Ta Ling can talk more about it, but we're waiting to be assigned an attorney.
Right.
to help guide us?
I'll follow up with them again. I started working on the documents that we had, but we were able to get some templates from the AG's office. So I'm gonna move the information that I had in the draft so that it conforms to that format. So there's likely to remove any likelihood of concern from the AG's office. And then
Okay.
I think we also did the lease IFB in-house. That's also coming up. So I was
Right.
also able to get through Weisenberger. Is that what his name is, Dave?
Weinberger.
Weinberger.
Rob
Yeah. So
Weinberger,
he also gave us the sample IFB. So just need to make sure, Dave, that we have the ability to put an advertisement out. And John, I don't know if it's okay to have the documents submitted to E&Y or Deloitte, or if there's any other place where you think we could have the documents submitted. I'll look through the documents to see if there's if we're able to do it electronically.
Okay,
don't
yeah,
have
I mean,
to-
that would be ideal to have it done, submitted, to accept electronic submissions.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, it's okay to be dropped off at my office as well.
Okay.
I'm sure that we can do electronic, but I'm not sure that we still may have to require one printed copy or something like that. But I know that you can include the electronic submissions to make it easier, but I don't know if you can do just the electronic submissions.
Yeah, I'll go through the documents that were provided and maybe send that Weinberg guy
Yeah, I
that
think-
question.
Yeah, Rob has been kind of our appointed AG rep since we started that hearing process. So
Hopefully he'll be officially
and from what
assigned to us.
yeah, I'm hoping so. He said that Carl's still off island, so
Yeah.
but typically he's said he's been assigned to handle anything with boards. So I don't think it's an issue if we continue. He did tell me that he thought that we were one of the better conforming boards, so he has no problem responding to us. When I asked him, did he want to attend our board meetings, he said, well, at this point, from everything he's seen, we're doing okay. He doesn't feel like he needs to sit in on us as much as he does on some of the other boards to keep him on track. So.
Okay.
Okay. The only other item I have is just to let the board know that Lola Paris, our staff, has submitted her resignation. She's gotten a job with DOE. And she says it's doing something she's always wanted to do. And I'm sure she can't turn it down, not only from that standpoint, but from the fact that it's a lot higher paying job. So we're going to be looking for staff. We're going to have to look for staff to replace her. She's been our kind of accounting assistant, all around admin assistant person. But in terms of the ad placement, Arlene has no problem putting an ad in the post. And she
Okay.
also puts it on the regular GovGuam notice
Looks
board.
right. Okay.
Yeah, those kind of things. So she can do that, no problem. We've been
Okay.
using the post for all of our advertisements. So she's got a contact there to get it done, or whatever you
Okay.
need to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that's basically all I have, unless if there's anybody that wants to attend the regional meeting in Colorado Springs in June, let me know. I mean, there's no hurry. They won't announce it for another couple months probably, but just think about it. It's June the 6th to the 8th in Colorado Springs. So just let me know and I can request scholarship for that. So. And I'm planning on attending the executive director meeting, which is April 25th to 27th, I think, something like that. And then there's an AICPA meeting in May, and then the June meeting, and I may be off island for a few weeks there, attending those meetings, but it shouldn't interfere with our meetings as we're doing it virtually. So, okay. There's no other discussion.
Nothing. Can I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Okay, thank you
Second.
all.
Second by Francis.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Just, let's see who's here. Just wondering, is anyone going to Chari's funeral? You doing? I'm not sure if we all know who Chari is.
Wow, I didn't realize Charlie passed away.
Yeah, no, I just found out over the weekend last I forgot. First, I